as if it were liberated territory in Zimbabwe or Angola. Gibson himself said, "Wherever American cities are going, North will get there first." Gibson entered with his new city council, challenged the corporate sector's tax arrangements, and pushed business interests to take a more active and responsible role in the community. And now we will journey on with Walt Gollender on to Barnes & Noble's Clifton, New Jersey, where we will attend a photo shoot with George Foreman. George Edward Foreman was born January 10th, 1949. He is an American two-time former world heavyweight boxing champion, Olympic gold medalist, and successful entrepreneur. He became the oldest man ever to become heavyweight boxing champion of the world when at age 45 he knocked out Michael Moorer to reclaim the title he held 20 years earlier. He has been named one of the 25 greatest fighters of all time by Ring magazine. Nicknamed Big George, he is now a successful businessman and an ordained Christian minister who has his own church. Foreman has 10 children, and each of his 5 sons are named George. George Jr., George III, George IV, George V, and George VI. His 3 older sons are distinguished from one another by the nicknames Monk, Big Wheel, and Little George. Foreman is ranked number 9 on Ring magazine's list of 100 greatest punchers of all time. Foreman is also recognized for the George Foreman Grill, bearing the slogan "Lean, Mean, Fat-Reducing Grilling Machine." In addition, George Foreman has authored several books: Fatherhood by George, Going the Extra Smile, and George Foreman, God in My Corner, a spiritual memoir. Among the boxers he defeated was Cookie Wallace, who lasted only 23 seconds. In 1970, Foreman continued his march toward the undisputed heavyweight title, winning all 12 of his bouts, 11 by knockout. Among the opponents he defeated were Gregorio Peralta, whom he decisioned at Madison Square Garden, and George Chuvalo, whom he defeated by technical knockout in 3 rounds. After this impressive win, Foreman defeated Charlie Politi in 4 rounds and Boone Kirkman in 3. Still undefeated and with an impressive knockout record, Foreman was set to challenge undefeated and undisputed world heavyweight champion Joe Frazier, who in 1971 had scored a 15-round unanimous decision over previously unbeaten Muhammad Ali, following Ali's return to the ring after an exile of more than 3.5 years. The Sunshine Showdown took place on January 22, 1973 in Kingston, Jamaica, with Foreman knocking down Frazier 6 times in 2 rounds to win the championship by knockout in one of boxing's biggest upsets. In what was HBO's boxing's first broadcast, the call made by Howard Cosell became one of the most memorable in all of sports. Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier. Foreman went on to defend his title successfully twice during his initial reign as champion. His first defense in Tokyo pitted him against Puerto Rican heavyweight champion Jose Roman. Roman was not regarded as a top contender, and it took Foreman only 2 minutes to end the fight. Foreman's next title defense against Muhammad Ali was historic. Foreman had knocked out both Frazier and Norton on the 2nd round. The only fighters who lasted the distance with Foreman to that time were Roberto Davila, Levi Forte, and Gregorio Peralta. When Foreman and Ali finally met in the ring, Ali started on his toes, dancing around as advertised. Such was the intensity of Foreman's attack, however, that he soon was driven into the ropes. Foreman dug vicious body punches into Ali's sides. However, it quickly became clear that Foreman was unable to land a clean punch to Ali's head. The ring ropes, being reasonably elastic in nature, allowed Ollie to lean back and away from Foreman's wild swings, and then maul him in a cinch, forcing Foreman to expend extra energy, untangling himself. To this day, it is unclear whether Ollie's pre-fight talk of using speed and movement against Foreman had just been a diversionary trick, or whether his use of what became known as the rope-a-dope tactic was an improvisation necessitated by Foreman's constant pressure. In either case, Ollie was able to counter off the ropes with blows to the face and was able to penetrate Foreman's defense. As the early rounds passed, Ollie continued to take heavy punishment to the body and occasionally a hard jolt to the head, but Foreman could not land his best punches directly on Ollie's chin. Eventually, Foreman began to tire, and his punches became increasingly wild, losing power in the process. An increasingly confident Ollie taunted Foreman throughout the bout. Late in the 8th round, Ollie sprang off the ropes with a sudden flurry of blows to Foreman's head, punctuated by a hard right cross that landed flush on Foreman's jaw. Foreman was knocked down, overcome by much exhaustion as Ollie's punching power. He managed to regain his feet, but the referee stopped the bout. It was Foreman's first defeat, and Muhammad Ali would remain the only boxer to defeat him by a knockout throughout his two-phase career, although Ron Lyle and Jimmy Young did manage to floor him in later bouts. After losing his title, Foreman remained inactive during 1975. In 1976, he returned to boxing in Las Vegas against Ron Lyle. In the 5th round, both fighters continued to ignore defense and traded their hardest punches. Each man staggered the other, and each seemed almost out on his feet. Then, as if finally tired, Lyle stopped punching, and Foreman delivered a dozen unanswered blows until Lyle collapsed. Lyle remained on the canvas and was counted out, giving Foreman the victory. For his next bout, Foreman chose to face Joe Frazier in a rematch. Unable to mount a significant offense, however, Frazier was eventually floored twice by Foreman in the 5th round, and the fight was stopped. Next, Foreman knocked out Scott Ladeau in 3 and Dino Dennis in 4 to finish the year. In 1987, after 10 years away from the ring, Foreman surprised the boxing world by announcing a comeback at the age of 38. In 1989, while continuing his comeback, Foreman became a successful business entrepreneur. In 1990, Foreman met the former title challenger Gary Cooney. Cooney was knocked down twice, and Foreman had scored a devastating knockout. Foreman went on to win 4 more fights that year. Then in 1991, Foreman was given the opportunity to challenge undisputed heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield. Holyfield proved too tough and agile to knock down and was well ahead on points throughout the fight, but Foreman surprised many by lasting the full 12 rounds, losing his challenge on points. Round 7, in which Foreman knocked Holyfield off balance before being staggered by a powerful combination, was Ring Magazine's Round of the Year. In 1996, Foreman returned to Tokyo, scoring an easy win over the unrated Crawford Grimsley. In 1997, Shannon Briggs. Foreman was gracious and philosophical in his loss to Briggs, but announced his final retirement. February 2004, Foreman was training for a comeback at age 55, but then severed his relationship with HBO as a boxing analyst. George Foreman and the sport of boxing finally went their separate ways. And now I would like to thank Walt Gollender for his many flyers that he prepares and shares with many of his fans. This is how they come about. Mr. Gollender takes all his photos that he takes with many of the celebrities he has met and worked with. Many of the photos that you've seen here tonight are neatly arranged and prepared into flyers that he shares with all of his fans, many of whom are moving on into show business and are anxious to see the photos and hear the stories of the celebrities Mr. Gollender has met. And we are all too familiar with the pink business card of Mr. Gollender, Wanted New Talent, which is always attached to the flyers that you may receive. And for those of you who have not received one of Mr. Gollender's flyers, his current flyers would probably look like the one that you're about to see. So he's taken the photos, as I've said before, of George Foreman, neatly arranged them, telling the story of his evening